and the two plot lines don't really... Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the books that I read in the month of September. So I think it was a pretty good reading month for me. I was able to complete about 8 or 9 books, so that was great. And they were all pretty decent. I think there's only a couple that I was iffy on. So that's pretty good. I'll take that. And I'd like to just go ahead and show you all the books that I read and my thoughts on them. The first book that I finished this month was Released by Patrick Ness. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. This one was on that list of 12 books that I wanted to complete by the end of the year. So I'm really glad that I finally did get around to this. I've had this for a couple of years. I got it at Y'all Fest the first year I went. I gave this one 3.5 stars because there's a lot about this. So this kind of has 2 plot lines. It follows a boy named Adam as he deals with his pretty homophobic family, his new boyfriend, his old boyfriend who's moving away, all of those feelings. And then on the other side of town there's a ghost situation that's happening. The 2 plot lines don't really have anything to do with each other, but they're there. They cross for a hot second and that's it. So I believe with every Goodreads review that I have read on this, which is that they could have done without the supernatural. Because I agree. It flipped back and forth between the supernatural story and Adam's story, and every time it would go back to the supernatural story, I just wanted it to be more Adam. I wanted that story, and that's what made it meh. So that's why I gave it 3.5 stars, because the supernatural part, I could care less about. I only wanted to know about Adam and what was happening with him. There are some pretty intense topics in this book, mostly with Adam's side of stuff. So it definitely deals with sex abuse. It deals with a family who's not accepting of you. It deals with homophobia, that kind of stuff. This book takes place in one day. So there's a lot that's going on here, and it's really kind of a character study in a sense of Adam. And seeing him grow within this one day. So that's why I gave it 3.5, because I think it's really important, and I think that Adam's story is absolutely fabulous, and this book would have gotten 4.5 or 5 stars from me if it only focused on Adam. But because it also focused on this other part, I didn't care that much. So I'm really glad that I read this, because when I heard Patrick Ness talking about it, that's what made me want to get it. And I am glad that I ended up picking this one up. So yeah. The next book that I completed was Voices, The Final Hours of Joan of Arc by David Elliott. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. I loved this book so much. This was told in a lyrical format that included bits and pieces from the actual trials of Joan of Arc, as well as following a ton of different stuff within the story. So it followed Joan of Arc's perspective, people who knew her in real life, as well as inanimate objects that knew her, her sword or her armor or a tree. There was really random stuff like that, but it was really interesting getting to see their story in relation to Joan of Arc. So that was really interesting. And I was really worried about this book because I'd read David Elliott's Bull in June, I want to say, and I didn't like that one at all. It did absolutely nothing for me. It was a retelling of the Minotaur story from Greek mythology, and I thought it was gonna be great, and it was but this one I really did enjoy. So I'm so glad that I actually finally got around to this, because I said, I was really worried about it because I didn't know if it was him or if it was just that story, and I think it's just that story. I really do like him as an author, and his writing style is very lyrical. I think that's why it worked for this one, because it was kind of a past setting, so it really fit well for this character. In the month of September, there was a Sabathon readathon, which was based on books that you would read to basically make you cry. And so I had this idea of participating, and so I kind of did it, but not really. So that's why I picked up the next book, which was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is her debut novel. I read her second, Circe, in August for the Owls, or for the Newts. And I put this one off because her writing is so amazing, and I absolutely love it, that I was afraid it was going to be too much when it came to this story, because this story follows kind of like the Iliad. It follows Achilles and his best friend Patroclus but in this book they're lovers. So like that was an interesting take that I liked. But it follows war, so I was really worried about her writing and if that was going to like impact me too much because of like blood and gore being like not my thing. But it's actually worked really, really well. I'd say her writing isn't as lyrical in this one as her second one, and I don't know if that's because Cersei is a goddess and so she was writing differently because it's a different character, or if it was just because it was her debut novel. We'll have to see when she comes out with another book. But I did really enjoy this. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and so like it was awesome, and I definitely had a lot of feelings. I think I did end up crying at like the very end, which was great. Even though like, you know, if you've ever read the Iliad or know anything about Achilles, you know how this book ends already, but like putting a human like emotion and face to it like she did, I loved absolutely. And the very, very end, like the last few chapters, I liked it a lot because of how she took the story at the very end. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without like spoiling it. The perspective that Patroclus had at the very, very end, I liked that she did that. I think that's a safe way to do it. Because this entire book is from Patroclus's point of view. There's a siren outside. So I am really happy that I did finally get around to reading this one. I don't think this was on my list of 12 books. I think I just wanted to read this one before Cersei, and I never actually did that. But I'm glad that I read Cersei first, actually. Like, I think that's worked out well. But yeah, I really did enjoy this book a lot. The next book that I ended up reading was 2 A.M. Thoughts by Mackenzie Campbell. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I somehow forgot to write that down. But that sounds about what I would have given it. This one is a poetry collection that follows kind of in the same vein, if you're just like looking at it, as Rupi Kaur's books. Because it's that kind of, you know, short poetry that is like one conscious thought, as well as having like some illustrations in there as well. So like that is what prompted me to get this one. I picked it up from Target. So I just saw it and thought, why not? Because I had just finished Rupi Kaur's first book, and I thought that I would give this one a shot. And I did really like this. It reminded me a lot of Lovers in Dictionary by David Leviathan, because the fact of this is about one relationship, but it takes place in only one night. So each poem has like a little, I don't know if you can see it, but each poem has like a little timestamp on it, and it starts at dusk and ends at dawn, and at 2 a.m. is when all of the like breakup and the heartbreak happens. So it's like showing the progression of a relationship in the course of a night. And it kind of reminded me structurally of the Lover's Dictionary, because they do the same thing in that book, except for it's in like a dictionary, so it gets a bunch of words that have to relate to what like that little section is about, but it kind of skips all over the place, whereas this one is actually like chronological. So I liked this one a whole lot. It's not as hard-hitting as like Rupi Kaur's books are, but it does, I think, really good. Obviously I liked it because I tabbed so many things. But yeah, this one was just another fun poetry book that I'm really glad that I ended up picking up. The next book that I ended up reading was Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I'm holding up the collection I have of her books because I don't have it separated, but it's her like least known novel because it's written in like a novella format. So they're all like written in like these letters between a family. And so I listened to the audiobook of it. I'm putting this down, this is heavy. I listened to the audiobook of it, and it was a full cast recording, which I thought was really, really interesting. And it's a really short book. Like, it's not long. I'm pretty sure that the audiobook was like maybe 2 hours. Maybe. But I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars because it is so funny. Like, this was her sassy book. Like, this shows how Jane Austen thought about some stuff, because it really follows this woman, Lady Susan, whose husband has just died, and so she goes to stay with her brother-in-law, I think, or maybe her brother, a sibling. She stays with a sibling's family, and kind of goes after one of them, and kind of throws her daughter under the rug a little bit, and the family doesn't really like her at all, and they're like really worried about her getting her hooks in this boy. It's like a whole thing. and then she ends up not falling for, or like that relationship doesn't work. It's shenanigans to its finest, and her writing is so sassy. I just adore it. So good. Glad I read that one. So the next book that I read is probably one of my favorites of this entire month, and that is A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult. I've learned that I've been saying her name the wrong way this entire time. This one's about like a woman's health clinic that does abortions, and a shooting / standoff that happens there. And so like it's a super tough book to read because of the topic, and like there's a lot of stuff happening in this book. The structure of this book is kind of told backwards. So it starts at 5 p.m. when like the standoff is ending and all the hostages are kind of getting out, and then it goes back in time all the way up to 8 a.m., which is like right kind of all of the pre-stuff that causes the gunmen to come into this clinic. And then the epilogue takes place at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. So it goes back to the beginning of like the final kind of what's happening. So I found that really an interesting way. I don't think it like hurt the plot, but I don't think it helped the plot to have been written that way either. And then like another big thing that I found interesting about this book is that she humanizes both sides of the plot. So like you get human stories for the pro-life and the pro-abortion debate. Like you get both of them, and it makes you like step back and go, oh, okay, didn't think of it that way. Regardless of like what side you're on, I think it's really obvious which way she leans in the story, but I think she does a good job of showing both sides of the argument. There's a lot of really hard topics in this, so huge trigger warnings for abortion, obviously. Rape is a huge part of this book, at least for at least one of the characters, maybe two. There's a lot of adult themes, obviously, because this is an adult book, so there's like a lot of talk about sex, obviously. And one huge thing that I will say is, I don't think this is a spoiler, but it is, like, it might be a spoiler, but it goes along with the, like, trigger warnings, so like I definitely want to mention it, is that there's an abortion that takes place in this book on the page. So it's from the doctor's perspective, and it's all very scientific and very straightforward of how it's happening, so it's more of a explanation of the process than anything else. So I just wanted to mention that because I found that really interesting, and like it's a huge, like I said, trigger warning for anyone who is uncomfortable with that topic, but also because it like tells you how things are happening. There's an author's note on the back of this which explains kind of like how she went about writing this book, and she actually, sat in on a couple abortions, late term as well as early term, kind of. I don't know what the exact wording for that is, but 2 different timelines so that the process is different, so that she can get an idea of what that was like. I loved it because it was so hard hitting, and I don't think there's not much I can say about it more, just because it just makes you think. Like, it's almost a month after I read this book, and I'm still thinking about it, and so it still makes a huge impact, and I think that is really important, and I really liked it, and I'm really glad that I ended up reading it. I definitely gave it 5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed it, and it made me think. On a slightly lighter topic, it's a lot lighter, the next book that I finished was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the illustrated edition. I was able to go out and get this one not too long ago, so that when I got around to this book, I could read it this way. I definitely listened to the audiobook as well as read this, which was great. So 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this. This was fun. I had more fun reading this one than the second one. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in this book and in the 4th book that, like, is so different because I haven't read them in so long that in my head I have the movie version. And there were a lot of differences that I was like, oh, alright. So I'm really glad that I read this one, and I'm like continuing with my Harry Potter readathon that I didn't think I'd actually get to this year, and I'm like halfway done, so rocking it over here. And the next book just kind of goes right along with that because that is the fourth Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I gave this one 4 stars, or 5 stars as well. Like I said, when I read the first 2, I don't think I'll ever give Harry Potter anything beyond 5 stars, except for like maybe the next one. The 5th one might get 4 stars because that's the like rough one to get through. So they both still read like a middle grade. So I'm interested to see, because I remember the last one not reading as much as a middle grade, more reading more like a more closer to like the YA kind of situation. Maybe the 6th one as well, but this still kind of reads like that for me, so I'm wondering when it's going to kind of switch a little bit, so that is interesting. And because this book is so big, I forgot so much about this book. Like, there are characters in here that I forgot existed, like Winky, the house elf. So it's just really interesting how much goes on in this story that I forgot beyond the Triwizard Tournament. So this was great. This is the book that changes everything. So at the end of this book, you know, when Voldemort comes back, they all have to like team up, and Dumbledore goes on his whole like, I'm ready, we gotta start doing stuff now, and that's the Dumbledore that I remember, is the one from the later books. So we're starting to see that one again emerge because stuff is happening in this world. So I've got 3 more books to read in my readathon, and I've got 3 more months. So I think I can do it. We'll see. The next book that I'm going to talk about is the only book that I have DNF'd, I think, this entire year. So, and that was Georgia Peaches and Other Forbidden Fruit by Jane Robin Brown. I will admit that I only got 30 pages into this, but I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't do it. And this is one of the books that was on my 12 books I wanted to read by the end of the year. So I gave it a shot, so I'm still going to count it on that list, but I'm not going to get rid of it because I'm going to try to go back to it at some point. I don't know if it was the topic was like making me uncomfortable / iffy, like I was meh about the idea of this book, or if it was just like the time that I tried to read it. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't get into this book. This book is about a girl whose dad remarries and moves them from Atlanta to a smaller town in Georgia, and she is out and proud in Atlanta, and when they move to a different part, the dad basically says, hey, it's your senior year, can you just kind of like stay in the closet for another year just to make things easier for you, to make things easier for like my new wife's family, like I'm comfortable with you, but like just for the next year. And so like I don't know if the entire idea behind that made me uncomfortable, but like I couldn't get behind it. So I didn't give this one any stars, obviously. I don't like to give ratings to books that I didn't finish, because I don't think it's fair. So yeah, I'm not going to give her this one because I want to try it again at a different part, and like maybe in the future, but like it just didn't do it for me. This also read a lot like older YA, like at the time when like Twilight came out and all of those types of YA books. That's what this read like for me. So I don't know if it was just because I had like moved on and like YA has changed a lot and it seemed a little childish in the writing. I don't know, but I couldn't do it, so I had to put it down and move on to other things because it would have caused like a huge reading slump if I hadn't. And the last book that I want to talk about here is one that I technically finished in October. It was the 1st of October, so I technically did finish it in October, but I've read so much of it in September that it feels more appropriate to put it with my September reads, and that is The Wicked King by Holly Black. Oh my god, the sun is like moving. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, just like The Cruel Prince. I decided that the last one in the series is coming out in November, and I got the special edition Owl Crate box for The Wicked King, and I was able to do the same thing for the next book, The Queen of Nothing, and when I got this box, it had an art print in there that I think spoils the ending of the first book, and I didn't want that to happen for the next box that I get in case something in there spoils this book. Also, I just really needed to read this book before the third one came out. So I decided to just go for it, and oh my gosh, it was so good. I have a lot of the same feelings about The Cruel Prince as I do with this one. It took me a little bit to get into it, but not nearly as much. I think it only took me about a third of the way to get into this book, whereas The Cruel Prince took me like half the book. So this one's a little bit more politically charged, I would say, than the first one, because Jude, our main character, is much more involved in the palace life in this book than she was in the first one. At least in these books. I should have seen it coming, because there was a huge plot twist in the first one. And she did the exact same thing in this one, where like you have 15 pages left of the book and you think you know, alright, all of the big stuff is ended, we just need to wrap things up. And then she throws another curveball at you and you're like, I'm sorry, what? And then the book ends. And you're like, I'm sorry, you can't do this to me. This is not allowed. So I should have seen it coming for this one, because I got all nice and comfortable with how I thought the book was going to end, and I was wrong. I'm intrigued how that's going to go with the third book, because it seems that's a theme, at least with these books, that she likes to do. But the next one is the last one. She doesn't have any other one that comes after that to solve whatever problem. The romance in it, I'm still on board for, even though like I don't see it, how it's going to end well. I still want it. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in the next book, and I just need it here today, and I have to wait a whole like another month and a half. It's fine. And that is it. Those are all of the books that I read in September. Like I said, it was a really good reading month. I think the lowest I gave anything was 3 stars? 3.5 maybe? Sounds about right. So I had a really good reading month, which is great. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys also had really good reading months in September. Let me know down below what your favorite book that you read in September was. I'd like to know that. And then what's a book that you're really excited to read in October? I want to know that too. I am a gigantic dork. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to be part of this awesome growing family I've got going on over here. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye! Time keeps moving on me.